Before Naruto, before the rise of the Uchiha prodigies like Sasuke and Itachi, there was one man who reigned at the top of the totem pole, Hashirama Senju, known as the god of Shinobi before Hiruzen, and he wasn't just a legendary Hokage, he was a one-man army. But just how strong was Hashirama really? Join me in today's newest Naruto Explained video and the newest installment of The Strongest in Naruto, where we're going to look at the true monstrous power of Hashirama Senju in depth, from childhood prodigy to god-tier Hokage to a reanimated juggernaut standing head and shoulders above the new generation. We're going to break down all of his stats, we're going to break down his feats, and we're going to do it across 3 stages: Child Hashirama, Alive Prime Hashirama, and Edo Tensei War Hashirama. We're going to cover the strengths, the weaknesses, and signature jutsu and compare him against some of the strongest shinobi across the entire Naruto timeline. So obviously up first, we're going to be going with Child Hashirama. This is the prodigy of the Warring States era. Hashirama as a child was stronger than Madara, who by himself had already killed several adult Senju without ever unlocking the Sharingan, and had gotten on the radar of Hashirama's father. That's basically a academy student walking up to and killing several highly skilled Jonin and doing it easily. Hashirama engaged in countless battles against Uchiha clansmen, many of whom they did have the Sharingan, which granted a sense of precognition. Despite this, Hashirama defeated many of them. This is a bigger deal than I think people realize for a child to do. If you have 2 people of equal stats fight each other and one of them has a Sharingan, the person with the Sharingan is going to have an unfair advantage in most scenarios, unless there's another Kekkei Genkai like a Byakugan to balance it out, or there's some crazy hidden jutsu that will even the fight. Hashirama as a child, with just his taijutsu, it had to be on a different level to strike down countless untold numbers of grown Uchiha who had years upon years to master fighting with the Sharingan. And for Hashirama to do that is insane. This means that Child Hashirama had to overcome not just adults, but adults with one of the strongest dojutsu in the world, one of the 3 great dojutsu. Even crazier, there is literally zero indication that Hashirama in the manga had ever awakened wood release during this time, since in the manga we don't see Hashirama use it until he's an adult, which means that this was Hashirama becoming the John Wick of Uchiha slayers, with nothing more than just straight hands, raw taijutsu, and whatever kunai was in his hands. His battle experience in the Warring States era was forged through several life and death encounters, not structured through traditional training, since it is implied that he was basically doing training games and training on his own in order to get stronger. He arguably became the strongest member of the Senju clan even before he reached adulthood, when we factor in him as a teenager, surpassing even seasoned warriors. Imagine pulling up on a kid thinking that you're going to get an easy win, only for that kid to be Kid Hashirama, and he hits you so hard that your head just explodes. The key takeaway here for Kid Hashirama is that even as a child, he was already stronger than elite shinobi, both Senju clan members and Uchiha clan members, and that is a rare feat for this stage of the eventual rise of the clan head of the Senju. This also pays off what Kakashi told Naruto back in the Land of Ways arc, where he said that in this world there were going to be kids who were younger than Naruto but stronger than Kakashi, despite Kakashi at that point in time being considered a world-renowned elite Jonin, and you can argue Kakashi was pushing Kage level at this point. Kid Hashirama is what Kakashi was telling Naruto if that was a person. Now we're going to move on to Alive Hashirama. The peak of power, the Warring States era and the Hokage era Hashirama. This Hashirama fought and defeated EMS Madara multiple times, including when Madara had both the Nine Tails and the Perfect Susanoo. That combination alone would destroy any hidden village and any Kage within seconds. Their final battle lasted over 24 hours, and was so intense that it reshaped the land and created what we know as the Final Valley. Despite this, Hashirama still had stamina left over and could have continued fighting after the fact. This is even more impressive when you realize just how strong the full Nine Tails is, which I don't think enough people put credit on. With only one half of the Nine Tails, let me repeat this, with only one half of the Nine Tails, Naruto's Bijudama was capable of overpowering 5 Edo Tensei Tail Beast avatars who had their Jinchuriki that each had Rinnegan. Hashirama had to fight both halves of Kurama, not just one half, and he also had to fight a high-level ninja like EMS Madara simultaneously. And despite this, he defeated both of them. This lines up with what we've seen with Hashirama, because prior to this, he was powerful enough that he fought Madara with the Mangekyo Sharingan, and that Madara was too weak to defeat him. And even after Madara got the Eternal Mangekyo Sharingan by taking Izuna's eyes, and he got the Rage Amp following his brother's death, which we know for certain makes the Uchiha even stronger when they feel hate. Despite this, Hashirama was able to defeat EMS Madara, and he did so without even trying to kill Madara, which speaks volumes to the gap in power between the two. He was holding back, which is how he was able to overpower Madara despite having the Nine Tails assist him. Even crazier about this version of Hashirama is the fact that he outran the full Nine Tails to lure it away from the Hidden Leaf Village, which is an insane and underrated speed feat because the Nine Tails in of itself is a massive sized monster capable of moving at high speeds, yet Hashirama easily outran the Nine Tails. This is also even crazier when you realize that he possesses wood release jutsu capable of restraining Kurama, and that is a feat that not many people can replicate. With just one half of Kurama being inside of Naruto, and that half of Kurama that Naruto had was getting up to the 8th tail, and despite this, Pain was still struggling, whereas Hashirama could have contained that version of Kurama easily. Then it gets even crazier when you realize the Sage Mode mastery. Hashirama can instantly enter into Sage Mode without standing still. That is a feat that no real user of traditional Sage Mode has replicated. For reference, Jiraiya needed several long moments to gather enough nature energy to enter into Sage Mode. Naruto, while he could gather nature energy on his own, let me restate this, Naruto can gather nature energy on his own. That is evidenced via his training. He did have to sit down to gather nature energy. He had to be perfectly still. Naruto would find a way around this by making shadow clones to gather nature energy while his main body would fight, and he would later on use Kurama to gather nature energy for him because Kurama was extremely fast at doing so. But Hashirama is the only person that we've seen who instantly goes into Sage Mode without any evidence that he was previously gathering nature energy. Make of that what you will. And I know Kabuto is able to maintain Sage Mode. We'll touch on that in a moment because what Kabuto did is a little different from Hashirama. So this mastery of Sage Mode by Hashirama, it also speaks to his vast chakra reserves and his deep connection to nature energy. This is directly stated in Naruto's manga that a shinobi needs to possess massive amounts of chakra just to attempt the Sage Mode training. If you don't have the high chakra levels, the massive, enormous chakra levels, you cannot even attempt the Sage Mode training. That is another sign of how broken Hashirama is. His body was also so unique in that it allowed him to seamlessly transition to the Sage Mode power. This is an as of yet unexplained biological phenomenon in the Naruto world for Hashirama because we're left to speculate if he had some type of unspoken biological assistance to gather nature energy passively. Think of what Kabuto did. He was using Jugo cells in order to be able to gather the nature energy and basically go into it instantaneously. Hashirama, we don't know if he had anything like that. Now, the other thing you have to look at with this version of Hashirama is that he has a lot of versatility and he has a lot of utility. First of all, Hashirama, we know via the 4th Naruto databook, he had mastery of all 5 basic chakra natures. That's on top of him having wood release. He can also use genjutsu. We see that in Naruto's manga during the battle with Hiruzen in Naruto Part 1. He also has barrier ninjutsu. He has the multi Rashomon gates they can use for summoning defense, which is capable of blocking a Biju Dama, and he also has massive wood release constructs he can use. He also has a very aggressive and passive healing factor. He can regenerate wounds that are done to his body without having to use hand seals and without having to use something like what Tsunade has with the Byakugo seal. Then when you look at Hashirama, he gets even crazier when you realize that he's basically a walking tailed beast subjugator. He captured and subdued 7 of the 9 tailed beasts with his own power. Technically 8 when you consider that he was able to defeat Kurama. However, Mito Uzumaki sealed Kurama into her own body, as we're told in Naruto Volume 53. After Mito sealed Kurama inside of her, the guy offered the rest to the other villages in the attempt to stabilize the ninja world. On top of him having multiple wood release jutsu that can restrain and absorb chakra, he also has the 1,000-hand Buddha statue, which it can also fight autonomously, and it can perform ninjutsu of any chakra nature that the user knows, which makes Hashirama even more broken. And that's just one example. He's also got other creations via wood release that he can make that are capable of battling a full body Susanoo and battling off easily tailed beasts. For historical context, during the First Great Ninja War, his mere presence alone was enough to briefly end conflicts and make the other Kage gather into a room and speak to him, because they all knew had Hashirama gotten serious with any of them, all this fighting that was going on in that first war, it would have ended right then and there. His power is spoken of as being mythical by the time of the original Naruto series. This isn't by mistake either, because Hashirama's raw chakra levels in his prime were something more insane than I think a lot of fans realize. Whereas someone like Kisame was being called a tailed beast without a tail due to his high chakra levels. If Kisame is a tailed beast without a tail, then Hashirama is basically a whole different monster. We have to come up with a different description for him. When Naruto began using Kurama mode to hand out chakra to the Shinobi Alliance, Hashirama looked at that and he basically said, "Oh, how cute. This guy has almost as much chakra as me." Though it should be worth noting that this is Hashirama referring to Kurama mode Naruto, not KCM2 Sage mode Naruto, which that version of Naruto would obviously be stronger than the Naruto who Hashirama said had almost as much chakra as him. But legend has it, either version of Naruto has a lot of chakra, and we don't know if Hashirama was comparing that Naruto to his current chakra levels as an Edo Tensei, or if he was comparing the chakra levels to his prime when he was alive. So you can debate that in the comment section. Now, further evidence for how insane prime Hashirama was, Kakuzu's village literally sentenced Kakuzu to death because he failed to kill Hashirama. And while this wasn't Kakuzu who had the forbidden jutsu of his village that allowed him to steal people's hearts, Kakuzu was still a very powerful shinobi. Him being able to subdue multiple tailed beasts on his own with just his raw power before he fully captured them with his wood release, that is another crazy, insane feat, because the Akatsuki were each picked specifically because Obito and Nagato assessed them as being strong enough to defeat a Biju or a Jinchuriki in battle, and each of them were viewed as S-rank Kage level shinobi. Yet Hashirama, he did this on his own, which is even more insane. Think of Hashirama with every Biju you can think of, except for the one tail that was in the Sand Village and the 9 tails that was still inside of Mito Uzumaki, and the guy basically had a leash around their neck. He was keeping them as house pets. That's how strong he was. Even further evidence for how strong alive Hashirama was, it can be found in the War Arc of Naruto, specifically looking at the feats of blind Madara, who was revived via Rinne Rebirth. According to Hashirama, this same blind Madara, who easily pushed back War Arc Sage Mode Naruto, who was not using Shadow Clones at the time, so this is full power Sage Mode War Arc Naruto, and he's dodging attacks of EMS Sasuke, and then absorbed the Sage Mode chakra of Edo Tensei Hashirama. According to Hashirama himself, this Madara, who now had Hashirama's Sage Mode chakra, wasn't even at full power that he was at when he was alive, which means that you can also directly upscale a live Hashirama in his prime due to all this info that we have via the war power creeps that exists. The key takeaway for this is that prime Hashirama, he wasn't just Kage level, he was a tier well above Kage level. He was basically knocking on the door to that level of power needed to fight a 10 Tails Jinchuriki. Not saying he's 10 Tails Jinchuriki level, but he's knocking on the door there. Between Sage Mode, Chakra Volume, Battle IQ, versatility, and just raw power, this made him one of the strongest shinobi of his time. And just being honest, one of the strongest shinobi to have ever existed in the first 72 volumes of the Naruto franchise. Once we get into Boruto, that changes a little bit, but that's still extremely impressive. And that also brings me to Edo Tensei Hashirama in the war arc. Because even in death, this guy was a monster. When he's revived by Orochimaru, just by casually molding a fraction of his chakra, he cracked the Uchiha Shrine. The building, it was shaking. He was cracking the floorboards and the walls by casually doing this. Even as an Edo Tensei, he was capable of overpowering the Ten Tails momentarily using giant wooden restraints like, say, the Torii Gates. And this is insane when you consider just how strong the Ten Tails is. When Naruto attempted to sense the power of the mindless Ten Tails, it was so immense that it overwhelmed Naruto when he attempted to sense it, even after being warned by Kurama that the Ten Tails was an immeasurable mass of nature energy. Even crazier, this was Hashirama as an Edo Tensei holding down that same Ten Tails. And when Orochimaru revived Hashirama, Hashirama was not at full power. Though, as Tobirama notes, they are close to full power. So this might be 1 to 2 percentage points off, maybe even 5 percentage points, 10 percentage points. But when you're this strong, that extra few percentage points is a lot, especially when the only person who made Hashirama go, yeah, that guy, he's definitely stronger than me, is Ten Tails Obito. And we don't know if he meant himself or if he meant the Edo Tensei version of himself or if he meant himself in terms of his prime, due to it being a somewhat vague statement since he didn't clarify what version of himself he was speaking about, though you can argue that he was speaking of himself as an Edo Tensei currently. His barriers that he was making with the other Kage, they were strong enough to contain the Ten Tails, a being so powerful that, again, Naruto could not even properly sense its power. He also outclassed those same Edo Tensei Hokage in terms of chakra output, because he made 10 wood-release shadow clones of himself during that barrier formation, whereas Tobirama could only create 2 to 3, and Minato could only create 1. That speaks volumes to not only his high chakra levels, but also the fact that Minato had the power of Kurama inside of him, the yin version of Kurama, and that also speaks volumes to his level of concentration. Because as we're told in the Pain arc by Naruto, when he's explaining why he's using 3 shadow clones on the battlefield and why he can't make more than 3 shadow clones on the battlefield, when you're using high level jutsu or things that require high levels of concentration, the shadow clones can get distracted. So that speaks volumes to his level of concentration, that he made 10, whereas Tobirama made 2 or 3 and Minato only made 1. Not only that, but he also had perfect Sage Mode and he had full access to his arsenal of jutsu while doing this, which is insane. Also, another note to take into account, when Edo Tensei Hashirama is comparing himself to Naruto in the Kurama mode without KCM2 Sage Mode, when he says that Naruto's almost at his level, that means that Hashirama is an Edo Tensei. You name anyone that Naruto fought in the war prior to that, Hashirama whoops their ass. This version of Naruto was already outclassing damn near every Kage level shinobi, Edo Tensei Kage, that was fighting in the war, with only arguably Edo Tensei Rinnegan Madara KCM, Edo Tensei Minato, and Edo Tensei Hashirama being the only one stronger than that version of Kurama Mode Naruto, giving more perspective to just how broken Hashirama's chakra levels are. Even blind with Hashirama's Sage Mode chakra, who could defeat Sage Mode Naruto and pressure EMS Sasuke, yet Hashirama stated that that wasn't even Madara at his full power, which again upscales him. So the key takeaway here is that even while nerfed as an Edo Tensei, he was still stronger than most living shinobi and most shinobi, damn near every shinobi that existed prior to that. Even at partial power, he was still to be considered a god tier shinobi. In terms of his signature jutsu, he's got quite a few. He's got the wood release deep forest emergence, which creates massive trees for area control as well as crowd suppression to take out multiple targets at once. He's also got that wood golem jutsu, which was able to tank hits from Kurama and a perfect Susanoo. He's got the sage art through several thousand hands, a jutsu so big it dwarfs tail beasts, makes them look like children. He used that to pummel Kurama in Susanoo armor. This is basically like you're pulling up to the red light with somebody, they're revving their car, and you're going, oh, isn't that cute? That car's stock. I got a whole supercharger underneath the hood. Then you got the multi-Rashomon gates. That's an elite defensive technique, able to tank Biju Dama. He's got passive regeneration that can heal fatal injuries in mid-battle. That's even more impressive because, again, Tsunade has to use the steel in the forehead, and Naruto needs Kurama's chakra to do that. And he also can just summon a wood dragon that is capable of absorbing chakra and able to restrain Biju, and also leave behind splinters when it's shoved up the rear ends of Uchiha everywhere. Now, that's not to say he's not someone with weaknesses. Every shinobi has weaknesses. So he does have a lack of direct counter to advanced space-time ninjutsu like Flying Raijin or say Kamui. He also does not have sealing jutsu skill because he sucks at it. Hence, he needed to sit around and wait for Sai to show up to seal away Edo Tensei Madara. Despite having him pinned away, he's twiddling his thumbs going, man, would be nice if there was someone who could seal away Madara. Wood release chakra is also chakra intensive. The stamina needed to sustain and use wood release, it is something that is pretty big. However, you should take note of the fact that Hashirama is a stamina monster. So even that weakness really isn't a weakness. And despite Sage Mode, he doesn't really have any feats against high-level genjutsu that we can point to. But given his extensive experience fighting against Uchiha, he likely knows how to avoid being placed in situations where he can be placed under Sharingan Genjutsu. He also has emotional vulnerabilities when it comes to his boo thing that's called Madara. In conclusion, how strong was Hashirama Senju? Well, I guess you could say he was just him. Hashirama at the peak of his power. He's stronger than EMS Madara and Kurama, and arguably, he's knocking on the door of 10 Tails Jinchuriki power levels. Again, not in the same tier, but knocking on the door. His combination of massive chakra, sage mode, regeneration, wood release, it makes him a force that could easily take down hundreds, millions, billions of nations if he wants to. Even decades later, his name alone, it was enough to inspire awe and fear. Evidenced by the fact that when the shinobi were watching Madara and Hashirama battle each other, shortly after Hashirama and Madara locked up during the 4th Great Ninja War, the ninja are walking and they're going, this is like watching gods fight each other. Hashirama Senju wasn't just the first Hokage, he was the summit that for several decades all shinobi tried to reach and few ever came close to it. Obviously, if you enjoyed this deep dive into Hashirama, leave a like and comment. Let me know who you want me to cover next in this video. Again, we're gonna basically do a reboot of that True Power series, if for no other reason than the fact that those old videos I did for the True Power series, they suck in terms of editing. So leave your suggestions down below for who you want me to cover. In the meantime, click here to check out more videos from the Strongest in Naruto playlist, or click here to watch videos from my One Piece channel, or click here to watch videos from my Anime Explained channel where I talk about non-Naruto content.